Hello guys, we're going over the second filarial worms and the second portion of the pseudocoelomates starting with filarial worms. So filarial worms, all of the members of this family, they are within the nematoda. They have all of the characteristics of nematodes. They call them blood-borne flukes. I'm sorry, not flukes, blood-borne roundworms. And they do not lay eggs. They give birth. They're viviparous. So maybe I should write that down somewhere in here. They're viviparous. So they give birth to the L1, and that L1 is called microfilaria. So the first organism, I gave you a little bit of introduction to the filarial worms, the Filariidae family, if you would. They are viviparous. They give birth to their L1, and they are always within our blood and lymphatic system. They do not go out in the environment. And then they also have to be transmitted by, the life cycle is indirect, and it has to be transmitted by a, if you would, by a insects, okay, like a fly, a mosquito, or something like that. They have to be transmitted that way. Okay, so the very first organism is Wuchereria bancrofti, and the name of the disease is called Elephantiasis because the arms or legs or scrotum, they can become by accumulation of edema, and then you will see some pictures here in a minute. And then when the edema accumulates in there, then the arms or legs or scrotum can become like an elephant, feet of an elephant. So they call it elephantiasis, and you will see the picture here in a minute. It lives, the organism lives in our lymphatic system, and that's why the absorption of edema, absorption of fluid from our blood vessels, it would be almost very difficult. So the edema, I keep it saying edema. So the blood edema. So the fluid accumulates in our blood vessel in our body. Anyhow, I spent too much time on edema, but that's okay. Microfilaria L1, as I said, they give birth to L1. The female gives birth to L1, to microfilaria L1. And then female released L1, transmit them. So what happens, the life cycle goes L1, L2, L3 in a mosquito, and then L3 is transmitted to human. In human becomes L4 adult. And the adult, they go to wherever they're supposed to go, different organs, different parts of the body, and they copulate, male and female, they copulate, and they release L1. L1, it percolates in the body, insects, a fly, a mosquito, what have you, they come and take a blood meal, and inside of that insect, it becomes L2, L3. Did I say this? L1 is picked up from human, and then the mosquito becomes L1, becomes L2, L3, and L3 is transmitted to another healthy human being, and the cycle goes on and on. So you will see some slides of Wuchereria bancrofti. Onchocerca volvulus, I do not have a slide of them, but they cause blindness. The common name for this disease is river blindness. And what happens, it happens in high elevation in Africa, same as Wuchereria bancrofti. It happens in Africa, high elevation in Africa, up in the hills, mountains. And then what happens, the fly that lives on the running water is called cymelium. So the cymelium comes to the banks of the river to take a blood meal from a human, but their life is actually, the life cycle, everything else is on running water. And that's why these organisms, and when they come to the banks, the larva, it goes in the eye, makes a person blind. Now they research in recent years saying that, you know, there is a bacteria in these organisms that cause the blindness, not the actual organism that causes this blindness. Onchocerciasis is the name of the disease transmitted by black fly cymelium. I didn't mention it in here, but you should know the name of the black fly is cymelium, is the name of the genus. And then, as I said, the name of the disease is called onchocerciasis or river blindness. The next organism, you only have to know in the filarial worms, there are 3 species that you should know. Gyroflaria ematus, we do have models of it in the lab. And then we do have microscopic slides of it in the lab of the microflaria L1. So that is found in the United States. The Gyroflaria ematus, of course, all over the world. And of course, United States is part of it. Onchocerca volvulus and Wuchereria bancrofti, it cannot be found in US. Gyroflaria ematus is found in US. And that is in dogs. The common name is dog heartworm. As you can see in this picture right here, you have the heart of a dog, and inside of it, these worms, you can see usually only 1 male and 1 female is found in the dog's heart, and they copulate and they release this microfilaria L1 into the blood circulation of the dog. And then a mosquito comes, take a blood meal and take it to another dog and infects another dog. And that's how Gyroflaria ematus is transmitted from dog and cat to dogs and cats. However, there are very rare cases that human gets this parasite too, and in case of human by surgery, they go to the heart and they remove the worms from the heart. In case of dogs and cats, it's expensive. The dogs and cats might die. They usually do not do that surgery, but they put drugs in to kill them, which is not very healthy, but they usually, what veterinarians do, they put the drugs, they give drugs to dogs and cats as a prophylactic. I hope you know what I mean by prophylactic. As if the mosquito bites them, nothing will happen. That's why you got to keep taking your dogs to veterinarian, and they keep giving them these drugs, the dewormer, they call them dewormer. So they give them this dewormer and they do not come up with it. Dog heartworm also rarely in human and cat. Here is an example of elephantiasis, and the life cycle goes on in elephantiasis. You started up with mosquito right here, and then in the mosquito, the L becomes L3 and then transmitted to lymphatic nodules, and the legs become Wuchereria bancrofti. Of course, this got to be Wuchereria bancrofti as well. CDC, this is Gyroflaria ematus. So the life cycle is between dog, mosquito, and dog, but human can be bitten, and then of course in human it can happen. This is an example of elephantiasis. These things can go away by surgery and medication, but again, these people live far, far, far away from first medical treatment, and they just let it go. He has to walk 100 miles to first medical facility to get this treated. So he said, forget it. I walk 100 miles with this. This is the dog heartworm, Gyroflaria ematus. The next one that is not a filarial worm is a sign of, well, we parasitologists believe the sign of medicine is because of this, and then other people in medicine don't believe that. We like to argue and have fun with it. So what happens, the next organism is Drocunculus medinensis. The common name is Guinea worm. Intermediate host is a copepod. Copepod is a crustacean that happens in contaminated water. And final host, of course, is human. And by drinking contaminated water, we become infected. It has an interesting life cycle. I will share it with you. And this is not a filarial worm. Make sure you know that for your exam purposes, and you figure that out. So what happens, the life cycle, we human drink a contaminated water that has this copepod. Copepod is a crustacean. We drink it, and inside of that copepod, the larva L3 is inside of the copepod. So what happens, we drink it, and when we drink it, it goes inside of our gut, male and female. Of course, the female, they're there. The female makes its way down to our legs. If we go to a body of water, we put our feet into a body of water. The female recognizes that, and they come out, and they come out of the leg. It's like science fiction movies. The female comes out of the leg to lay out the larva L1 into the water. And then the larva will swim and find a copepod and get inside of the copepod. And then when inside of the copepod becomes L2, L3, when we drink the water with the copepod, of course, out of the copepod comes the L3, becomes L4, adult, and then the females make their way down to our leg, and then they release their larva into the body of water. Very interesting. Here's a gentleman going to a body of water, drinking that water, possibly. And then if the water is, of course, two possibilities, maybe the worm is coming out, laying out the egg, and of course, he's drinking the water. Here is the worm coming out of the leg, and they put a stick. The best way to get it out, still, after all these years, the best way is to get it out by putting stick around it. That's why the science of medicine right here, because of the stick and the worms around it. And that's what this is. The stick, the worms are, this is the worm coming out of the body. And then if you take the whole worm out of the body, the whole Dracunculus medinensis, nothing will happen. The person will be healthy. However, if while you're taking the worm out of the body, Dracunculus medinensis, if it breaks, the person can undergo prophylactic shock and die. So it is very, very, very crucial, very important that you take the worm out without breaking. And if it breaks, it is possible that the person dies. Okay. Here it is, the worm coming out of the leg of the person. And then, of course, you can take it out by a stick. Okay, so let's go back to this. World Health Organization proclaimed that once 6 major diseases, schistosomiasis, we already talked about that. It's a flatworms, it's a fluke, blood fluke. Malaria is a blood protozoan. Filariasis, so you've studied that. That's the only thing we didn't study. Trypanosomiasis, leishmaniasis, and leprosy. Of course, leprosy is caused by bacteria, causes disfiguration and death. These are 6 diseases that World Health Organization proclaimed a lot of lives in human. And here they are, 6 of them. Out of the 6, 5 of them, they are parasites, which we studied all of them. Here is a stats I got out of a book. Again, take it with a grain of salt, but we human are still battling with this. Ascaris, about millions of people are infected with these. Anyhow, deaths are occurring here. I'm not sure how finalized is this, but we studied all of these organisms. We know about them all. And malaria is supposed, I've heard in one place 6 million, but this book says 1 to 2 million, which I got it from. Okay, the next one is a phylum, a Nematomorpha. Again, this has a very interesting, I'm not going to, the common name, all you have to know, the common name is horsehair worm, and it's a parasite of, it's a pseudocoelomate animal, and it's a parasite of cockroaches. So cockroaches are walking around, all of a sudden this worm, if you YouTube it, comes out of them, and then of course the cockroaches die, but the worm try to find its continue its life cycle. And the common name is called horsehair worm. Right here, you wrote it down, and then it's phylum Pseudocoelomate. Perigordius is the name of the species, which we do have in the lab, and then he's showing you all of the cross sections and longitudinal sections. Again, I'm not too worried about it. Clades with protosomia, modern molecular phylogeny group, acoelomates and coelomates taxa together within the protostomes. Protostomes not divided into two large clades, Ecdysozoa and Lophotropozoa, which are already talked about those. Okay, phylum rotifera philodina is the name of the species we have in the lab. So they are a freshwater animal. They have a structure oddly on top is called corona, like a crown. That's what the virus corona got their name from, because the spikes that appears on them is like a crown. That's what they call them, coronavirus. But they have structures. These animals have structures, have two corona, like a cilia on top of the animal. You will see. And, you know, some are sessile. Some of the species in this phylum are sessile. Some are colonial. Some are epizoic. Epizoic, it means they live on the surface of another animal. They are not ectoparasite. They just live on the surface of other animals. And they undergo encystment. And something, we discussed this before, encystment and excisment. And you will see it here in a minute, haplodiploidy. Body has three parts: the head, trunk, and tail or foot. And rotiferas move like leech or by corona. Sorry about that. Let me turn off cell phone. And then leeches and corona and the body. So internal structures, they have, I say internal structures, and the first thing I put is cuticle. Cuticle is the external structures, the most outer layer. The epidermis is syncytial. I guess I'm going from external to internal. And subepidermal muscles, location of pseudocele, and then mastax or pharynx have muscles. Mastax, it's a stomach area is called mastax. Salivary and gastric glands. Protonephridia, they do have protonephridia, remember, and they get rid of the they're responsible for osmoregulations, but remember that nematodes do not have protonephridia. Nematodes, all of them, do not have protonephridia. And then they have cloaca, okay? Just the males of nematodes have cloaca, but these guys, they have cloaca, bilobe brain, dorsal, mastax. Reproduction, they are dioecious, and one testes, male lack cloaca, female have cloaca, we talked about that. Copulation, male penis can penetrate any part of the female and inject sperm. So nuclear consistency, it means utility. You remember that? We talked about the nuclear or cellular consistency, it means utility. And for example, there are 183 nucleus in the brain, 139 cells in the stomach, and 172 in the corona. Here are the corona. That's what I was talking about right here. And the mouth is between corona. So these ciliated structures beat. When they are beating, what happens? Food comes to the mouth. Right here. This is a cut drawing, but this is a real animal with two corona on top. So this would be a head region, this would be body region, and this would be foot. Remember the three sections that I mentioned. And right here are different body. You don't have to know different body parts, but that's pretty much all. They're different. As I said, there are different species, and they have corona. Here is haplodiploidy. Okay, this is diagram of haplodiploidy. Okay, so what happens? The female. This is a female. Corona on top, foot on the bottom, and body right here. He has 2 sets of chromosomes, 2N. And then when they release the egg, by the process of the mitosis, release the egg. The egg, it's a 2N, becomes a female. And that's what they call it, a mictic female. It means it does not go through meiosis. It means without. Mictic in this case means meiosis. This female makes eggs, and the egg becomes female. Female makes egg by process of mitosis, becomes female. Female by process of mitosis makes eggs, and the eggs become female. So this cycle is called parthenogenesis. Remember that? I talked about it at the beginning of semester in, oh God, I think it was in Protista, prior to Protista, I tossed this term at you guys, parthenogenesis. It means there is no sperm involved here. The female makes egg, the egg is 2N, becomes female, and so on and so forth. Now, when the condition of the environment becomes tough, right here, mixes stimulus, that's what it means, you know, the pond dries up. The water becomes cold, something happens. So the female, the egg that female makes, it becomes a mictic female. Mictic female makes sperm and egg, and both of those are haploid by process of meiosis. The haploid egg is fertilized by sperm right here, and what will happen, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to say the male. So the egg becomes a male. In a lot of species, they have not been able to discover the male yet. Some species, not a lot. Some species, they have not been able to discover the male yet. So the male releases sperm, and the sperm fertilizes the egg that comes from this mictic female, and that egg, 2N egg, is dormant. It means it undergoes encystment. It can stay in the environment for a long time. It does not multiply. And then when the conditions of the environment comes back to normal, then that egg, fertilized egg, zygote, becomes what? Becomes female. Okay, so this is the sexual reproduction right here. The male makes sperms, the egg of this female unfertilized haploid egg becomes male. And the male releases sperm, and the sperm fertilizes that egg from this female, that egg, and then the combination of that egg and that sperm makes a zygote, 2N, and it is encysted. It means it has a thick coat, it can withstand the conditions of the environment. And then, of course, this one becomes a female. Female makes egg. The environmental condition is normal. Okay, I think I explained haplodiploidy. The next phylum is phylum Acanthocephala, spiny-headed worms. The common name for this phylum is spiny-headed worms. They have a proboscis that contains spines. You will see a picture. Female are larger than male. They cause a little of inflammation, and they are flat. And the name of the organisms is probably the longest name that you have to memorize for this class is Macrocantharynchus iridensis. They are found in small intestine of pigs and human. Larvae develop in arthropods and they have no digestive tract. So how does food get absorbed through their tegument? Food get absorbed through their tegument. And of course, they have protonephridia. Here are some species. And again, usually, here's a proboscis that I was talking about. And they have spines on them. Here is a proboscis, some of the species. Here is a life cycle between human and pigs. Here's another diagram, which I'm not sure. You just guys look at it and enjoy it. I'm not sure about these numbers anymore. And he's mistakenly using infestation. Intestinal helminth in the worldwide human population, prevalence of infestation. That is not infestation, it's infection. You know that, we talked about it before. Okay, then the next clade is clade lophotrochozoans, bilateral symmetry and triploblastic. Some develop lophophore and ciliated tentacles or crown for feeding, some trochophore larvae, and phylum Annelida. I'm going to stop right here. So that would be the second portion of pseudocoelomates. These animals, phylum Annelida, are not pseudocoelomate, they are eocoelomates. We are getting into eocoelomates. All right, guys.